You're watching the Chaos Protocol on Transplanar RPG, an all-transgender, people of color-led dark fantasy TTRPG show set in an original non-colonial, anti-Orientalist multiverse. If you like what you see, please consider pledging to our Patreon to support the show and get access to a patron-only after-show, early podcast episodes, GM notes, character sheets, and even the chance for your tabletop OC to cameo in our series. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy. The Chaos Protocol is a dark fantasy series that may contain content that is triggering for some viewers. Content warnings for this episode include romance, flirting, complex and complicated relationships, trauma, grief, interpersonal tension, fire, and immolation. Arc 1, Episode 6. Spills Mayhem Bright. From Self-Eulogy of a Martyr by Connie Chong. The Royal Palace of Siren's Song is a grand, striking imperial complex built into the towering peaks of the mountain. Stout, horizontal buildings sport sloping roofs of glazed tile and red-painted pillars. Courtyards of blooming orchids, plum trees, and golden larch sprawl between large halls. Stone bridges arc over silver streams where fish dart between lily pads and lotus flowers. The smell of honeysuckle and incense is thick in the air, but the most striking aspect of the royal palace are the branches. Thick wooden branches curve around every pillar, every wall, every bridge, every roof. Flowers bloom along these branches, flowers of every color and size and species, yellow orchids, pink peach blossoms, orange lilies, white peonies. There are also fruits, bundles of bright red lychee, sprigs of orange kumquat, fuzzy purple yang mei. Even from afar, these branches are visible as integral to the architecture of the palace itself as floors and walls. From your position at the base of the complex, walking up the gentle but challenging slope toward the main gates, the palace resembles a flower crown on the very peak of the mountain. It is colorful, vibrant, full of life. And as Abasi explains on your way up, the royal residences of the three major reaches were one of the first structures to be built after the initial bloom of the Verdancy. And though this palace is only 300 years old, which is young by some, it seems to carry memories of civilizations much more ancient than itself. After all, the people of the Wild Sea are the descendants of those who came before the Verdancy. Memory has a way of living through blood and root. We push in now on your party, reaching the main gates of this palace. And gate here is a little bit of a misnomer because there are no hinges or locks or even doors. Instead, a towering wall of thorny branches blocks your passage into the first courtyard of this palace. These branches seem to be the same as the ones that twine around every building in the palace that's just beyond your reach. But instead of flowers and fruits, these sharp, thick thorns sprout from the ancient bark of the vines that impede your progress now. And I think as we pull down on your party, I want to get a sense from each of you, how have you been taking the travel up the slope, and maybe what do you look like now after your remarkable meal at the Yellow Pin Wolf? I want to start with Lumièra.
So Lumièra, since she has to slide back into high royalty, I guess, if that makes any sense, like into that gear, she is walking very intentfully. Her cloak that is normally goes up over her shoulders in these sharp pauldrons that are now kind of just branches that are cross over her entire torso. As they were walking, the branches started to uncurl from across her shoulders into like a halter neckline and branch out into this massive corset that wraps around her torso and back down. The tree is very much still prominent on the back, but it starts at about mid back before it wraps itself up, and you can see right along her left collarbone is this very jagged scar that's in this marble that is it's whited over at this point in time, but you can tell that in the marble you can tell that it was once a crack and it's been molded back into and smoothed over a bit, but it's very much still prominent. She doesn't show her shoulders that much, and she just kind of is looking around at everything before getting stopped by a bunch of purple orchids and like drops to a knee to like smell them and just thumbing over the petals, admiring them for a second. That's her.
Yeah, as you're admiring these orchids, as your party comes to a stop in front of this looming vine thorn wall, I want to pan over to Xainan. What's Xainan been up to during this journey?
The food was nice and filling, which is always satisfying to him. He likes simple things, and eggs are familiar and easy in most planes. On the walk over, I think as Lumièra begins to shift, he walks right up next to her. And at first it's subtle. He's just walking there. But he stays at her pace very purposefully until there is a moment where the other three are distracted. And he just offhandedly, out of nowhere, so, Phoenix had some regards for you.
Lumièra aptly freezes in the middle of admiring these orchids and kind of steals her face for a second, turns around, and looks you very directly in your eyes. Into what regards?
Naeem has spoken of you. And I was curious how you left that, what your feeling is about it.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand your question, Xainan.
Just don't know very much about your record there. Having a wonder. Flowers are beautiful.
Yeah. Orchids are my favorite.
And I think at that, he sets his jaw and looks at the vines around, and as he looks towards Seir, his hand moves on his down his side towards that weird wisp at the top of his boot, as it looks like a gust of dust blows off of him as he looks towards the orchids and Seir's head.
Well, things didn't necessarily go the way they were supposed to.
Really?
And I lost my clearance.
It's all right. Our win.
Yeah.
Come on.
And she looks visibly uncomfortable. Like,
I think sensing that he lets her go for now and starts to head back to the other three.
Yeah, as you part, and Lumièra, there's a moment of uncomfortable solitude by yourself, as I think you're observing these orchids, and you cannot help but hear in the back of your mind screaming and shouting and chaos going off from a memory that you've tried to walk away from, but that still haunts you, and the sensation of healing gone wrong, healing gone sour, dust wiping that rejuvenating magic into something else coming in to twist it, and then a hand rests on your shoulder, and it's Sing. Hey, Lou.
Sing, hi. Hey.
I
You
picked
good?
these for you. And Sing, like, pulls out a small bouquet of flowers that have orchids arranged, I think, as, like, the central thing, but there are little bits of, like, green leaves, and honestly, a very well put together arrangement as she presents it to you.
Lumièra just genuinely smiles and takes them. These, you even got the purple ones.
Yeah, I know how much you like those. Hey, listen, what happens in the past is important, sure. I'm not saying it's not, right? But it doesn't define us, you know? It's what we do now, it's the choices we make now that do.
And she looks like she was getting ready to say her typical statement before she would go further in what she's feeling, and audibly bites her tongue. Duly noted. We have a mission. The both of us.
That's right.
Thank
We
you.
do.
And
Yeah,
she
of
just kind
course.
of points the flowers like directly towards her before she will visibly turn and go back the other way. Like,
Yeah, yep. As you turn and go, I think you just hear Sing kind of like call after you. Oh, and Lou, for what it's worth, I think Nova looks better on you than Phoenix.
she stops for a second, before kind of rolling her shoulders back again, taking her normal stance. Doesn't verbally acknowledge it, but keeps going. She does have a bit more pep in her step, though.
Yeah, as you return to the rest of the group, I want to know what Seir's been up to, while Xainan and Lumièra and Sing are maybe a bit indisposed.
Seir has a very different look. His pupils are still wide, as if still coming off great adrenaline. He has deep pink, almost lightning marks all the way down his neck, down to his chest. And off to the side of his neck, the marks of deep red suckers. And on his arms, he also has more of those deep, like, pink electricity marks. He
So
went
you're-
through it.
If
He
I may-
enjoyed. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
Please
I think
tell me.
as it's just you by yourself, Abasi pulls up next to you and gives you like a bracing pat on the back and says, "At least we're both banned for life."
Yeah, at least it's the both of us. And as he kind of like mutters that, almost like disappointed but not surprised, he looks towards Lumièra, bent down to gaze upon these purple orchids in full bloom And the orchids upon his head open and bloom even more, like sunlight has just touched them. And he sighs and looks upon her, just gazing upon this. And then the air shifts after the conversation with Xainan. Conversation with Sing. And if I may, Lumièra, what is a stress tell that Seir picks up in this moment?
Lumièra has a hard time staying still. She always has. And if she's walking, if she's standing still, you can visibly almost see and hear her right heel clicking as her leg is bouncing continuously in anxiety. She's trying to steeple her hands and hold them the way that she normally does, but it's still too shaky. So she's making like fists and trying to close her hands in on each other before finally just sticking them in her pockets in full balled fists, and is very tighter than usual in her stature and her posture.
Seir, I think, was standing with Abasi and kind of just, without really looking at her, kind of just says, "Excuse me." He marches up decisively towards Lumièra, and he pulls something from his pocket. A fidget, almost. Like, it's really small and discreet. It's in the shape of a cube with almost ever-changing locks and gears all around it. And he walks up to Lumièra and he's just like, Lumièra. Hey.
Hey, Seir. Can I help you? Do you need anything?
No. The gum helped a lot, with everything. I'm...
She like grabs the side of your face and like looks at the lightning marks on the sides of your neck. They are better than they were previously.
I mean, fire was a no-go, so lightning it is.
You have to be more careful.
I didn't know it was going to jump at me.
You can feel her hands shaking still underneath your cheek.
He puts his hand on your wrist. You okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. Never better.
His eyes furrow on you. If you ever need to talk, just like in the observatory before, we can't. Just you and I. No questions or anything. All right?
Her eyes soften at the observatory mention of it. Of course. But for now, we have a mission.
We do, and
She drops her hand from your
maybe this will help. And he opens up his hand, and there's that little cube, probably like 1.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters each side. It's very subtle. It's black, and the notches are all gold. Helps me whenever I'm ready and raring to go.
I do not know what to say. Thank you. And she'll stick it in her pocket.
He just smiles and says, You don't have to say anything. I'm just here whenever you need to. All right. Now go piss off a queen, apparently.
I'm trying my hardest not to piss off a queen.
Good luck with that. He looks over at Abasi.
Xainan is over there, like, talking to her about the vines.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just making very, like, normal vegetation talk, right? And I
Yeah.
think Sing falls into step with Xainan and Abasi, and, like, she also kind of injects herself into the conversation and strikes up a very easy discussion. Sing has always had a way with other people. Like, she's always gotten even the most clammiest folks to open up. And when this group of the 5 of you, like, pull up to the wall proper, Sing is in the middle of saying to Abasi, and so, yeah, I guess you could say Lumièra, Seir, and I grew up together in a way, but then we kind of like drifted apart to go on our own wild sailing cruise, and now we're back together, and we're with Xainan now. Also, who's super cool. Oh, that's
Thanks.
nice. Yeah, I've always kind of wanted to be a wild sailor ever since I was a kid, but you know, royal, princess duties, all that stuff, you know, was never allowed to go out and just travel the wild sea, and now that the calamities are mounting in intensity, you know, my parents are using that as a double excuse to not let me out onto the Verdant Sea, but I want to be down here, you know, with everyone
thing
else
is-
doing stuff.
Parents will do anything to keep their kids safe. You should value that they care about you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I do, but it's also so, like, stifling, you know? Like, to have someone else
Yeah.
tell you exactly who you should be and what you should do.
They're looking at calamities, plural. They're just trying to keep you safe. I'm sure.
Xainan, you do notice out of the corner of your eye when Abasi says to have someone tell you what to do and who to be, Sing kind of soured at that. She kind of like drew back a little bit and like had crossed her arms over her chest and looked inward a bit, like in a way that isn't very Sing. There's a moment of vulnerability there, a moment of something of what Abasi said seemed to resonate within her. But then you look again and she's back to her usual buoyant, jubilant self, right in front of this wall. Okay, so is this the gate? And Abasi studies this wall with a very careful eye. These are soul shanks. They are a kind of vegetation that's endemic to Siren's song. Actually, it's said that the queen of this place and her cowardly daughter can control the soul shanks. Apparently, they can see the true intentions of anyone who approaches and will treat them accordingly. Full disclosure, I did get through the last time by blasting a hole through the wall, but it did cause a ruckus, and the soul shanks did not like that. It's part of the reason why I was only able to grab a couple of useless books before the castle spit me out.
Your
God.
disrespect for books and literature is alarming, to say
I'm
the
just
least.
more of like a hands-on learner. Know what I mean?
I do, and I also think that the vines might also be hands-on learners.
Yeah, don't remind me. Princess Sahar, what do you mean by the castle spit you out? Oh, right, yeah, the soul shanks, I'm sure you noticed on our way up here, the castle is filled with them. Beyond the wall, all of those branches are technically soul shanks too, but they're just not thorny because once you're in the palace, they don't need to be thorny and super aggressive. You know what I mean? So yeah, one of those things found me and whacked me out like a gopher.
So we need to have the right intention.
Yep, and it's not just the intention that you think you have, it's your actual intention.
All right. And as he
That's-
says that, that dust fully wafts off of him in a visible amount at this point, I think, because he looks to Sing and his hand begins to move, just thinking about dealing with these vines in the same direct way that Abasi did, maybe a little more subtly than bursting through them. But the thought of true intentions being shown versus these vines kind of unsettles him a little.
Yeah, Xainan, actually. Speaking of you, I want to know, what intention do you name, maybe even out loud or hold in your mind, right? As you stand there looking at the soul shank vines, versus what is Xainan's heart's true intention, one that you might not even be aware of?
I think his conscious intention, having the mission always first, but also this creep of whatever is going on with Sing, is to protect everyone, to get out of this with the most lives saved. These calamities, plural, are gnawing at him, so he wants to save people. But deep underneath that, the dust and the grit are starting to really chew at him of this place. And every time someone says calamity, he has, maybe not externally every time, but internally winced. And his true desire is to save people that he could never save.
Xainan, as you stand there holding your conscious intention in your mind, right, looking at this wall of vines, the portion of the wall directly in front of you begins to move. It begins to shift in response to your thoughts, not even the ones that you say out loud, but the ones that you hold truly deep within the pit of your heart. And you see the tips of these sharp, fang-like thorns begin to turn to dust. This portion of wall just starts to flake away like petals of ash, but not just swept away in the wind arbitrarily. They take the form of someone, like a ghost being caught in this sheet of ash before they float away. They take the form of one of your parents. So tell me, Xainan, what does Aja's silhouette look like?
They are thin and willowy, almost as if the shadow from Zheguang were slight and a little bit more petite, but still with that same square shoulder, and like the shadow, an edge of confidence in the lean and the cock of a wide, flat-brimmed hat.
A familiar hat, I might add, and the dust catches against it, right? And you swear this silhouette, this memory, this ghost, this fractured shard that was subsumed by oblivion, you swear it looks at you too, and then it's gone. Wiped away by this dust.
The feeling of wind passing through just the space, whether or not it took the dust away doesn't matter. He can feel cold night wind with the smell of grass for just a second. And he steps forward.
Lumièra, what intention do you name as you approach the soul shank vines? And what is your heart's true intention that you might not even be aware of?
Damn, I was really hoping that was only going to be a Kai question. Okay.
The sights are trained on all of us, where none of us are safe.
Listen, none
There's
of us
no
are safe. Whew, that hurt me. Okay. So Lumièra's the intention that she's calling to mind right now is to help Princess Abasi in righting whatever wrong she feels, right? Like Lumièra understands the intentions, and while she may think they're kind of petty in some aspects, she also understands and wants to help. She's always wanted to help. That is her that is her core, that's her calling. But I think deep down, if you dig, you have to dig very, very, very deep. I think at her core, much like Xainan, she wants to help those that she couldn't and figure out the most succinct way that something like that will never happen again. She couldn't previously, but she knows she can. She just doesn't know how yet.
Lumièra, the leaves and thorns and vines in front of you rustle and move as well in response to your heart stirring. And at first, I think we see a kind of humanoid figure being formed out of like a laurel wreath of leaves and thorns and vines and roots and branches. And at first, you think it kind of looks a little bit like a Maru. Just a little, just, something about the divine celestial edges of it, something about the cock of Xair head, and something about one of Xair arms, which is missing. No, not missing. In the place of where it should be, we see these bone white, pale bleached branches peeking through, looking like skeleton, right, to form that arm. And we see this silhouette of Amaru cock its head and almost seem to shrink and vibrate with agony and rage and guilt, but not guilt at himself. It's your guilt being projected onto Zim, and then they glitch. And the glitching does not come from the leaves, Lumièra. It does not come from the soul shank vines. It does not really come from the verdancy, does it? It comes like a glitch in reality itself, a glitch in your perception, and you see it. The drifter. Directly in front of you, and yet still on the periphery of your vision, like you are in sleep paralysis staring at an entity you do not understand, and then it's gone. Seir, what intention do you name as you approach the soul shank vines, and what is your heart's true intention?
Seir has always been a very direct man. He does not like veils, he does not like untruths, lies, deceptions. And his surface intention is to unravel the truth, because Abasi's right. Something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. There are secrets upon secrets, and he doesn't like it. And his intention is to employ all of his training as a Strike Team Nova member and prove himself to uncover this truth. The deeper intention, almost like a temptation, almost like someone calling you home. Seir is looking at the beauty of the verdancy, the gorgeous flowers, the iridescent colors of fruits and leaves. All that came from calamity. And there is kind of like that deeper intention where he's like touching on that comfort, that seeking of the beauty underneath all of this, maybe a purpose for himself, where even he feels his strength.
Seir, question for you.
Oh no. Yes?
How comfortable are you, authentically, truly, genuinely, with accepting this part of yourself, trying to see the beauty instead of just the destruction?
It's like seeing a painting you know is beautiful for the first time. There is a clumsiness, trepidation, a way that he doesn't really understand what it is. It's when you're looking at a painting and someone asks you, what's your favorite thing about this painting? Why do you like it? And he can only fixate on one. It's just beautiful. So I think to answer your question, he's not fully accepting it. It's dipping his toe in to test the temperature, readying for the cold water to shock him out of it.
Seir, as you dip just a part of yourself into this acceptance, into this recognition of beauty within yourself that you see reflected in the natural world, and yet that you have denied, that other people have denied at the Syndicate from you for so long, I need you to make me a defense roll using teeth as your edge and brace as your skill.
Oh, that's good. I got more dice on that. Teeth and brace. That's
and I'm gonna
3d6.
cut 2 for difficulty.
Cut for difficulty. All right.
I'm cutting 2.
Well, you're cutting 2, so I remove 2 dice?
Yes,
Yep.
from your total result. The 2 highest.
Oh, Connie, why did you say that? That's 1.
You got a 1?
I rolled a 5 and a 2 and a 1, so yeah.
That's a disaster.
Yep.
The entire wall explodes into flame. Pure, incandescent, blazing. What color is it, Seir?
Blue.
Blue fire. It just pillars up. It goes up like an oil fire. And immediately, you all smell, right? Like burning sap and burning leaves and these twisting vines. You hear the crackling of it. And there's something else as well, this immediate popping sound as we see this kind of like thick amber liquid seep out from the now twisting, writhing vines ensconced in blue flame. And this liquid almost looks like, what was that drink? Cresser ale? But something about it is extremely flammable. And we see the blue flame starting to leap immediately. Like there's just no hesitation from the wall to the surrounding forest at the base of the mountain, the surrounding greenery and vegetation. And I think this just came out of nowhere, but it definitely leapt from Seir. We saw it, a spark of it exploding from the center of his chest, exactly where his tattoo was, and touching the wall, igniting it up in a single plume. Abasi stands in front of the wall, her eyes so wide. We see this blue fire dancing in her gaze, and her jaw is slack, and there's a look of like pure terror on the princess's face. And she has been so confident this whole time, honestly kind of arrogant, right? A bit blasé, a bit flippant, but all of that is gone. In the face of this heat, this fire, her eyes are so wide, sweat rolling down the sides of her jaw. She like takes a few steps backward and goes, what? No, what? And then Sing steps forward. We see her now, I think also silhouetted and haloed by this blue flame going up all around her. And she lets out a, Seir! Everyone, get behind me, quick! This place is going to go up in fire if we don't stop this now!
Xainan is actually frozen for just a second, uncharacteristically locked in place as the spark lights across the vines. But as soon as Abasi actually makes any noise near him, he wheels around, and by the time Sing is calling for her, when he wraps an arm around the princess and tries to drag them with him.
Yeah, you drag Abasi, she kind of stumbles, and she's like, what? Wait, what's happening? Is this an illusion? What? Fire?
Smells
Here?
real to
How?
me. Come on.
Yeah, and Abasi is stumbling backward. She's just like, she's absolutely shocked. Like, this is just like unthinkable for her. Lumièra, what are you doing?
Shit, I think I go on to defense mode with Sing, backing everyone up and kind of trying to figure out a way to coordinate with them how to best handle this. I don't think there's anybody injured as of now, so.
No, but the fire is spreading, and very quickly, as we see like the trees near you begin to ignite, they just go up like oil fires as well. We see that weeping amber sap coming out of those trunks. Like every single tree here seems to have that sap within them, and all of you kind of hear Abasi whisper, "The Chrysarin. Oh no, the Chrysarin, the Chrysarin." And then Sing whirls around to face you, Seir. And her face is so serious. It is exactly the same expression as she had back on that backwater plane, Earth or something like that, when that disaster caused by you had occurred as well. She looks dead serious, and she grabs onto your arm and she says, Seir, look at me, focus, okay? This is you. You can stop it.
He kind of is frozen in the moment because it leapt out of him. He didn't want this to happen. Why does it always happen this way? He didn't want it like this. And he kind of just tries to breathe in and listen to Sing and looks at the Krezzer and looks at Abasi and how terrifying everyone looks and how they're all looking at him. He's the cause of it. Again, it's 6-0. It's
Lumièra
Earth
runs
all over
up
again.
and places her hand directly on the side of your face. Look at me. You can do this, okay? Forget everything else. Focus on what you can do.
There is a glint in his eyes as if you're looking deep into a blue flame. The orchids fold up even further as if taking in the heat and the light of the sun. The amaranth all along his crown begin to peel open. And as they peel open, what I would like to do, Connie, in this moment is use Guide My Hands, my trait. I will burn to borrow a measure my ancestor's competency.
Okay. Ancestor, technically, you were kind of made by fate as an unintended byproduct. So you're trying to draw on that power, eh? Yeah, mark it. Yeah, go for it.
I will mark it, and I think this is him. I think this is iron. Oh, sorry, this is instinct, and he's trying to tap into what he knows. I want to ask for a brace or a break for this.
Break? I would say this would be like maybe a break to break the flames, right?
Yeah,
to just like
that's kind of what I was
completely
thinking.
destroy them. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so that's.
I am
So
gonna
I
cut one
get-
for difficulty though.
Yep, and that's why I took the Guide My Hands so that I at least have 3 dice. Okay, you cut 1 for difficulty. That's a 5 and a. Is it cut 3? Cut 1 or cut 2? Sorry.
Cut one.
Cut 1. That's a 5 and a 3. Then
That's a
total.
conflict. That is a success with a drawback. Okay, so I think what this means is, how does it look as you try to channel your magic, your destructive energy, but kind of turn it around inward onto itself so you quench the flames, right? What does it look like?
That's so fucked, but I'll do it. What happens is Seir does 2 things. The blue flame like licks and swerves wildly, but at the same time it looks like the heat and the wind that is being produced, engulfed, consumed by this flame draws the droplets of sap onto one contained ball of flame like a vacuum, and they drop these ember droplets, and as it does so it begins to pick up in almost like a twister, a contained twister, whipping these up into glittering dust flecks, and then it just absorbs the fire into a vacuum, and all that is left is a loud whirring of wind kicking everyone back.
So that's what you try to do. There is a drawback.
Fuck.
Yep, the blue flames kind of swirl into almost this kind of like orb. And the immediate fire by the wall does die down, and this orb kind of like travels alongside the greenery, flanking the area, picking up the rest of the flame, like wrapping it all up, right? Kind of collecting it like it's a big ball of debris, essentially. But Seir, you've never done this before. You are terrified. This is horrific. With your drawback, I think that means you can't do this by yourself, Seir. You've never really been able to do this by yourself, have you? Sing has always been better at the whole helping the world thing. And as you stand there quivering, I think your hands outstretched into these like curled claws, we see this ball of fire. All of the fire's been wicked off of the leaves and the branches and condensed into a single orb in front of you. And Sing, like wind and heat is whipping out from this sphere, and all of your clothes and hair is just like flapping all around you like there's a big gust. Sing comes up next to you and says urgently, Seir, if you lose control of this thing, it'll detonate. Here. And she raises a hand to join you, I think, next to the orb, and we see pink energy now swirling in as well. So it's pink and blue, as these two twins are like holding this orb, and together the two of you like squash this sphere down until it's about the size of the oracle, right? And then at the same time, the two of you kind of like clap your hands together, like you seize up the magic, and it's gone.
As the ash falls, Seir, all you see is Xainan's green eyes glaring at you from under the hat.
I don't think Dad is happy one bit.
Nice work.
Seir says nothing.
Sing. Seir.
A heartbeat late. Like everything in Seir's life. His name utterance, his creation. And he heard that heartbeat late from Xainan.
Is everyone alright?
Yeah, what the hell was that?
Wildfire.
Calamity.
Wildfire? I've never... God, I could have sworn it came from you. And Abasi turns to look at you, Seir. And I think there's a brief moment, but then Sing steps forward, kind of like interposes her body between Abasi and Seir, and says, it wasn't him. Xainan's right, it was just some kind of freak wildfire. The calamities, right?
Exactly.
That was a calamity. Yeah. I felt it in the magic of this place. Didn't the rest of you? This was a calamity, right?
The electricity does weird things around the sap.
Abasi's face narrows. It darkens. She kind of looks at each of you, trying to like suss you out. But then she seems to come to a conclusion, and her face clears up, and she goes, Yeah, okay, right, electricity. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, that was fucking terrifying. Wow. Okay. Well, thank the two of you for quenching that. I've never seen a conflagration up close. I didn't even know they were blue. That was okay. Well, we need to get like, like on this
let's
mission
go
now. Like
yes,
stat.
now. Yep.
Right now.
Yep. In front of you, this poor soul shank vine wall is charred. Parts of it had already reduced to ash. So there are kind of like these holes filled with this just like black soot, I think, that you're able to kind of like eke your way through. And the vines and the thorns and the branches are kind of quivering, almost like in pain a little bit, all of you sense. And especially you, Xainan, as you approach the wall with its like burnt down ashen areas, something deep within you pangs for it, right? This is a physically realized aspect of the world that was just hurt. But for now, it does kind of like let your party through. Like you're able to like slip through the holes in the Soul Shank wall. But even as you step through these like blasted open apertures, like before your very eyes, that amber liquid starts to seep through the wounds, and you already see new growth starting to sprout from like those crevices. You see like bright new tender green shoots coming out and starting to lace themselves back together. I think all of you get the sense that whatever this thing was, this liquid, this sap that Abasi had called Krezerin, it seems to both be very flammable, but also like immediately regrow like very quickly. And in fact, even the vegetation that's not the wall that had been burned also start to, before your very eyes, like re-sprout limbs.
I think as we pass it, Xainan, partly to like feel the greenery, but also as almost a bit of an apology, he reaches out and touches it and tries to feel some of that sap.
I would like you to make an action roll to see how much of the sap you can gather. That's either going to be instinct, sharps, or tides as your edge.
I think this is definitely tides.
Yeah.
And harvest.
That makes sense. Yeah, if you want to like maybe take a part of it harmlessly and examine it. Lumièra?
I think, yeah, it's
did you
just
want to
to
help?
touch it.
I honestly, before I even was able to open my mouth to do the exact same thing, Kai, but in Lumièra's own special flavor, I was going to do the same thing. First, so the gum that she gives people prior to healing them is her like trans-issued stabilizer, essentially. And it just helps the healing process a lot easier. But when she got to the Wild Sea, instead it became almost this mason jar of like this poultice of different plants and earth and elements that are grown down into like this paste. And she reaches into her cloak and unscrews it, takes out this massive handful and spreads it across like some of the most charred, like point of impact essentially spot to heal it. And she just kind of drops to a knee. I am so sorry. And in like another little like, because she carries pockets go deep in this cloak, and she reaches in and grabs a vial, an empty vial. She wants to collect some of that.
Yes. How I'll resolve that is I'll let you add a pip to Xainan's roll, and I'll also give you a little bit of a specimen depending on the outcome of Xainan's roll. So Xainan, add 1 advantage to your roll.
It's a good thing because I did not roll excellent. It is a 5 at the end, though. We got there.
A 5. That's not bad. So success with a drawback. I think I'll tell you what the drawback is at first for both of you, because Lumièra, you also helped. As soon as you touch any of the Krezerin, it burns you. The amber sap is like toxic to the touch. It's almost like some kind of acid or something like that. It hurts with just bare contact. So both of you are going to have to mark 1 on a track of your choosing. Xainan, which track are you marking?
Tough as nails.
Makes sense? Yep. I think there's like a sizzle like sound as like your fingers touch it, and maybe you just by instinct draw them back as they smoke. Yeah. What about Lumièra?
I'm gonna mark empty the mind.
It's kind of like your tranquility of mind and your composure, right?
Mm-hmm. Not even fazed by it.
Yeah, you do register it as pain, and I think a part of you just categorizes, oh, okay, Krezerin burns, right? Won't do that again, right? Like, and I think that's just how it is
I
for
think
you.
On that, she will reach into her boot and grab her knife to kind of like scoop into the vial, the rest of it after that, though, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. You learn from stimulus.
Listen.
That's what you do. Yep.
Everyone be careful. This stuff still recovering quickly, but it can bite. And he does shed a little bit of sap on his fingers to the other two specifically.
Yes. Xainan, you did get a success. So I'll tell you a little bit, and you can ask me a follow-up question if you want. So Krezerin itself seems to be like a part of all vegetation of the Wild Sea, right? It just seems to be kind of like the blood, for lack of a better term, of the verdant sea. Like all plants here seem to be imbued with it. And looking at it, like thinking of how flammable it was, but also how it stimulated new growth, you're starting to put together why maybe fire is so taboo in this realm. Because Krezerin is not only super flammable, but it always gives fire something to feed off of. You can't just like starve out the fire or wait it out. Like it keeps growing new things, so the fire keeps going. So like even a tiny little spark out on the open wild sea could turn deadly for like the entire world, right? It's the first thing you kind of come to the conclusion of looking at this. The other thing is kind of synergizing and resonating with what Abasi said about the soul shank vines earlier. These branches seem to be interconnected with each other, not just with the wall, but with all of the branches twined around the pillars and the buildings now before you. For lack of a better term, they seem to be like tendrils coming off of a hive mind, or like an interconnected neural network of some sort. Like what is felt in one place will be felt in another. And speaking of which, as soon as all of you pass the wall, do your little experiments by it, right? Abasi kind of ducks under and like brushes herself off. You all hear a voice. And the voice goes, "Excuse me." And all of you turn and you see the Queen of Sirens' song, flanked by an entourage of no fewer than 6 well-trained wild sailor royal guards. We also see kind of off to the side of her entourage what appears to be maybe like a dignitary from a reach that is definitely not Siren's song. Their robes seem to be of a different cut and make. And standing before you is Queen Hylian Mylesia. She is a tall, commanding woman with broad shoulders and this medium brown skin. And she has this loose, curly black hair that is swept up in a regal ponytail that touches the middle of her waist. And she wears these intricate purple and black silk robes and a crown of ivory thorns with these dangling strings of ebony pearls. And Queen Mylesia holds herself like a weapon would. She's full of steel and readiness. And her eyes are these bright, dazzling brown shades, and her elegant robes seem to disguise a deceptively muscular frame.
Your Highness. And Lumièra bows gracefully, intentfully, matching her stature itself.
Xainan doesn't say anything. He just removes his hat and kind of stands next to Lumièra like, I work for her. Don't worry about it.
Seir
What about you, Seir? Yeah, go ahead.
kneels clunkily, like someone who has practiced this but doesn't get it.
Might I ask who you are and what business you have lighting my soul shanks ablaze? Answer wisely.
Your Highness, a freak accident is what sparked ablaze your soul shanks. My team only did what was necessary in order to help assist, stop the conflagration before it reached any further. You and I both know how devastating that would be to this area.
The queen lifts a hand from her clasped fingers, right? And we see a vine curl out from underneath her sleeve, and it kind of twines around her finger, and like a leaf sprouts. It blooms open, and from that leaf a bud, and from that bud a flower. And she kind of holds the flower up to her face like it's talking to her, but none of you hear anything. She raises an eyebrow and turns her gaze back onto you, Lumièra, and says, "Fascinating, your assertion, given the fact that my soul shanks claim it was him that set them ablaze." And her eyes fall upon Seir. And then she opens her mouth to address you, Seir, but then her gaze flicks to the side where all of us see Abasi. This entire time she's been trying to, like, retreat back through the wall. She's been trying to, like, escape and, like, has been hiding behind Sing. And the queen's, like, very put together kind of cold, ascertaining look immediately freezes, and something kind of hot, like anger, flashes underneath the surface, and she just goes, "Princess Zahar?" And Abasi freezes, like 1 foot outside the wall and 1 foot inside of it, and she kind of turns and says, "Oh, hey, Queen Hylian, how are you doing?" "Princess Abasi Zahar. Your parents have been sending me some very concerning and accusatory missives about your whereabouts." And she kind of cuts herself off as she glances over at her, like, wild sailor crew, as well as, like, the emissary, who is, like, taking all of this in with wide eyes from, like, a completely different reach you assume is not the Raya, right? And then the queen goes, I have this under control." To her retinue, turns back to you. "The 5 of you, follow me to my sanctuary. We have much to discuss."
I figured we would.
At this, I think Abasi kind of and, like, pulls her leg back into the courtyard and kind of dusts herself off, looks sheepishly around, her eyes fixed on Seir, though, because she did catch what the queen said about Seir causing it. But then Sing kind of steps forward as their group kind of, like, starts to peel away from the wall and follow the queen, and Sing addresses Queen Mylesia and speaks. "Queen Hylian Mylesia, I just, before we even get to your sanctuary, I would just like to apologize for any of the unintended fallout or detritus that may have occurred based on what we may or may not have done collectively. It was never our intention to hurt the Verdancy in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we are here to help." And the queen kind of, like, looks down at Sing as her wild sailor crew begins to, like, dismiss themselves, right? Like, usher the emissary away. And once they are, like, fully out of earshot, the queen kind of, "I do appreciate that. But the contents of this discussion should be reserved for the ears of the sanctuary alone." And then she almost softens a little bit and says in a voice that's almost private to Sing, but the rest of you, especially Seir, can hear it, as Queen Hylian says to Sing, "My soulshank vines have also informed me that you were the reason why the conflagration was able to be stopped, so that is much appreciated." And Sing just kind of, like, nods and lets out "Thank you, Your Highness. Seir? Xainan? Lumièra? Abasi?"
Yes. Like my comrades said, we are genuinely apologetic, Your Highness. We just want to help. That is all.
And we were not clear that. And he shoots another burning stare at Seir.
Lumièra steps in between the
possible.
gaze. Blocks Seir from your gaze.
"Well, good. My vines also did inform me that there was no ill intent. Still, Power must be wielded carefully. And her eyes fall on you, Seir. There is much for us to discuss, especially you and I, Princess Zahar. The Raya is threatening war. And we're going to end the session there. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in to this very chaotic and off-the-rails stream of the Chaos Protocol. I have been your game master and creative producer, Connie. My pronouns are they, he, and she. You can find me across the internet at ByConnieChang. That's ByConniechang, namely TikTok and Twitter. I will pass things over to Valiant Lovewinds Dorian.
Hello, everybody. I'm Valiant. Love wins Dorian. Love is not winning today, though. I use he, him, his pronouns. You can find me all around the internet at Valiant Dorian or at Otso Spirit Bear. Please enjoy that lovely treasure hunt I just set you on. Tonight, I had the distinct pleasure of playing your misbeloved Calamitist Seir, who uses he, they pronouns. And I'm going to pass introductions over to Kai.
Oh, everyone. I am Kai. I am Estella Vimladris on all social media platforms. I'm still screaming inside. And I have played Xainan, who has gone on a whole internal roller coaster this fine evening. And I'm gonna send it over to Sam.
Hey, I'm fucked up. That's my name right now, actually. That is me. Just kidding. Hi, everyone. I am Sam Star. I use she, they, and the occasional they pronouns. You can find me all over the internet on social medias at Lust for Life X. And I have played Lumièra, our healer, who's not really liking these sharp-ass looks Xainan send in, but we'll get to that point later on, I guess. Boss, it's you.
It's a me, boss. So as a reminder, tune in next Saturday, July 15th for the next installment of the Chaos Protocol to figure out what the hell we mean by the Raya's threatening war. As a reminder to support the show, pledge to us on Patreon. Sharp-eyed viewers might have noticed several Patreon OCs having a cameo at the beginning of our stream, which is very fun. If you want that to happen as well, pledge to our Patreon and donate to us to unlock that $500 arc-long final goal of flashback sequences for all the PCs to figure out exactly what their damage is. So yes, thank you all so much for tuning in. We will see you next week, the 15th. But before then, Tuesday and Thursday of next week, the 11th and 13th, for the next podcast episodes. If you want to hear this fully mixed, fully sound designed, fully edited, in bite-sized chunks that you can binge, subscribe to our podcast wherever you pod your cast and leave us a 5-star review. And with that, we're gonna peace out. We love you all so much. See you next Saturday at 8 p.m. US Eastern Time. Tell your friends. Bye. Pijo.